I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min Football Network. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be looking ahead to Arsenal versus Brighton in the Premier League. A huge, huge game for the Gunners, hoping, of course, to bounce back after a disappointing defeat at Crystal Palace on Monday night. We've got a few players missing. It's going to be difficult. There's no question about that. And on this edition of the show, we're going to be looking at how we could potentially set up what the best course of action is for Mikel Arteta to take, given the absences that we know about. We're also going to be running through Mikel Arteta's press conference, which he gave earlier today. And we'll be, of course, taking some of your thoughts from the live chat box as well. Hope you're all enjoying your Friday so far. The sun is shining here in London, but it's bloody chilly. I made the stupid mistake earlier of going out of the house in a t-shirt, thinking, the sun's shining. Don't worry about it. It's April. I'll be fine. And I literally froze. So don't make that mistake if you're heading out on the town tonight. Okay, right. Let's start off, I think, with Mikel Arteta's press conference. I think this is probably the best place to start. Now, of course, the Spaniard faced the media earlier today. And I'm not going to go through all of it verbatim. I'm not going to go through all of his quotes. You can read it yourselves if you want to. You can, of course, visit arsenal.com, where there is a full transcript of the press conference. Football.London have it too. Or if you search on YouTube, you'll be able to find it as well. But I just want to highlight some of the key points. So Mikel Arteta highlighted that Thomas Partey's injury is significant. Now, we got that update from the club yesterday. We knew kind of what we were going to hear with regards to that. But yeah, it looks like Thomas Partey is going to be out for a little while. Mikel Arteta refused to be drawn on exactly how long, kind of hinted that we didn't really know. But obviously, him calling it a significant injury is significant. As I say, we got that pre-warning yesterday that this was going to be the case, but it's a big, big blow for Arsenal. And as I say, a little bit later on in the show, we're going to focus on how Arsenal can best cope with his absence. He was asked a lot about Nuno Tavares. Of course, Nuno has been one of the hot topics over recent days because, of course, he came in against Crystal Palace, didn't play all that well, if we're being honest. But this was not the first time that Nuno had come into the side out of the cold, not played very well, and been hooked off pretty early on. Mikel Arteta talked about the fact that, it's just one of those things. He's got to do what's best for the team. He said that Nuno is ready and willing, which suggests to me that Nuno is probably at the front of the queue in terms of who's going to play at left back tomorrow. I'll come on to talk about that again, just like the rest of the team, a little bit later on. But Mikel spoke about it being an opportunity for Nuno to learn from. And he said that every sort of now and again, and I'm not saying word for word, I'm paraphrasing, but basically made the point that throughout your career as a professional footballer, there will be moments like this. There will be ups, there will be downs, there will be difficulties. And it's kind of up to you what you make of them. You can take them as something that you learn from. And if you display the right attitude and if you have your head screwed on, that's what you would do. Or you can let them ruin you. And I think that Mikel Arteta was almost kind of, and I'm sure they've spoken privately. In fact, he said that they'd spoken privately. But I think in Mikel Arteta's mind, this was kind of a message to Nuno to say, don't let sort of previous below par performances define you. This is your opportunity to come into the team in a Premier League game and sort of restore people's faith and confidence in you. He was asked about Lacazette. Of course, that question keeps cropping up every week that passes when Alexander Lacazette doesn't find the back of the net. This whole debate comes up again. He said, look, of course I want my striker to score. Like, what manager doesn't want his striker to score goals? But he did, again, move very quickly to highlight the other positives that Alexander Lacazette brings to the team and his overall contribution. That's good management. You can't deny the fact that it's dried up for him in front of goal. I think it was 16 games without a goal from open play, which is obviously not good enough, not at the standard required. But equally, you throw your player under the bus, what good does it do? Got 9 games left or whatever it is. And we need Alexander Lacazette to be on song. And whether that is him putting the ball in the back of the net or providing for others, creating a platform upon which others can thrive, I don't know. But we need him at the top of his game. We need him to be full of confidence because, of course, we don't really have an alternative that fills anybody with any confidence that they can come in and do a better job. He was also asked about letting Aubameyang go and whether he should have kept Balogun, given all that's going on now and the fact that we haven't scored many goals of late. And I quite liked Mikel Arteta's response to this. Now, again, I am paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, well, it's funny how people ask that question now after a defeat. Well, where was that question for the last 6 or so weeks when we'd been winning games and picking up really positive results? And he's absolutely spot on. It is something that's going to continuously come up, because of the fact that we allowed both Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, first of all, to leave the club. And then, of course, following Balogun is out on loan with Middlesbrough. And he scored for Middlesbrough last week as well, which also adds to the kind of stirring pot around this one too. Right, let's dive into some of the stats and facts around this fixture. Of course, Arsenal take on Brighton at Emirates Stadium at 3 p.m. on Saturday. In the 9 head-to-head meetings between these two sides in the Premier League, it's quite evenly split. In fact, it is evenly split. Arsenal have won 3, Brighton have won 3, and there have been 3 draws between the two sides. Now, it's a small sample size. Brighton haven't been in the Premier League for a very long time, but they're here now and they've caused us problems. They're a side who, for some reason, seem to be able to get one over us. If we go back to last season, earlier this season, we drew 0-0 at the Amex Stadium. And if we're being completely honest, we didn't deserve anything from that. We were really lucky, I thought, to get out there with a point. If you take it back to last season, we did a good job over Brighton. We won away by 1-0. And of course, we beat them towards the back end of the campaign at home. But if you go back to the season prior, Brighton did the double over us, a 2-1 victory on Saturday, 20th of June. If you remember, that was the infamous Matteo Guendouzi game, wasn't it? And the Neil Mopai game, and the game, I think, where Bern Leno got injured as well. And take it back even further to Thursday, the 5th of December, 2019, we were beaten at home. So they've had this kind of upper hand over us, since coming into the Premier League, but we're unbeaten in the last 3 games against Brighton. So you'd hope that being at home, and given the fact that they this season have really, really struggled after a really positive start, because they have, if you look at where they were at the start of the campaign and the trajectory that many sort of expected them to be on, I beg your pardon. That's awful of me to sneeze in the middle of a podcast. I tried to hit the mute button and I opened my emails instead. Shocker. But yeah, look, if you look at the trajectory that Brighton were expected to be on, given sort of how they'd started the season, then of course you have to say that they've been quite underwhelming in the second period. But equally, for Brighton, what is the goal? What is the objective? I would say staying up is first and foremost what Brighton need to be doing. If we look at the recent form of the two sides, let me just zoom in on that a little bit, just to make it a little bit more visible to those of you, because I recognize it's probably a little bit difficult to see. Looking at the recent form guide, if you look at Brighton, well, they have lost 4 of their last 5, and their last result was a draw at home to Norwich, a 0-0 bore draw there. I say ball draw. Brighton had a lot of the ball, had a lot of attempts at goal, had a lot of opportunities. But as has been typical of Brighton in recent seasons, not just this season, this extends beyond that. They were unable to convert and unable to score goals. But if you look at some of those fixtures in which they lost prior to that, where people were saying, Brighton are on this awful run. Well, they lost to Spurs. It's not really a disgrace. They also lost to Liverpool. Prior to that, they'd lost away at Newcastle, who obviously were resurgent at that point, and they lost to Aston Villa. So none of those defeats jump out at me as sort of disgraceful or something that if I were a Brighton fan, I'd be sort of reading into too much. But obviously, they'd been on a disappointing run for a while, and that kind of compounded it. Arsenal have won 3 of their last 5, 2 defeats coming in that last 5 games. The most recent one coming, of course, at Crystal Palace just the other night, and the one prior to that coming against Liverpool at Emirates Stadium, sandwiched in between victories over Leicester and Aston Villa. So we're in the better form currently and going into this game. If you look at our seasons overall, well, Arsenal currently sit in 5th place, of course, knocked off a 4th last Sunday, and we were unable to turn it back around with a victory at Palace. We've won 17 games this season. Brighton, who sit in 13th, have won 7. They've drawn 13 times, one of the Premier League's draw specialists, along with Crystal Palace, and I think Wolves are probably up there as well. Off the top of my head, we've lost 9, they've lost 10, so they've only lost 1 game more than us, Brighton and Hove Albion, but draws have been an issue for them. You look at Arsenal, just 3 draws this season, so it's very much been winning or losing. Average goal score per match, Arsenal 1.52, Brighton 0.87. Average goals conceded per match, we're only slightly better than them on that. Brighton do not concede goals. This idea that Brighton concede a lot of goals and are really easy to get at, well, it's a bit of a myth, and that backs it up. When you look at their average over the course of the season, it's clear that there's not a great deal of difference between the two sides. In terms of goals conceded overall, well, Brighton have conceded 36, Arsenal have conceded 34, so they've only conceded 2 goals more than us over the entire season. Moving forward onto clean sheets, they've managed 8. Arsenal have managed 13. Chances created per match, 1.1, but Brighton, 1.27. We all know, however, that Brighton and ourselves actually have an issue converting those chances. So what kind of game are we going to see? Well, some of these stats suggest that it will be a low scoring game, and others suggest that there'll be lots of opportunities. So I guess the question is, can the two sides convert their opportunities? Who can do it better? And that side will obviously come out on top, just based on sort of looking at it from a statistical and analytical perspective. So those are some of the stats and facts going into this game, comparing the two sides. But I guess the big thing now, and the big talking point and the big debate and big discussion, is around who should play for the Arsenal. So Mikel Arteta has got a number of selection headaches, in my view, just based on the players that we've got missing. So I've been thinking long and hard about how I would set up for this game. Would I change the formation? Would I go with someone who isn't naturally a left back at left back from fear of Nuno Tavares' poor recent form coming up to bite us in the arse? Well, I've thought long and hard about this. I told you guys earlier in the week that for me, the sensible thing to do was to leave Nuno Tavares in at left back, and I've not changed my mind on that. So if I just share with you guys the side that I want to see picked, it's Ramsdale in goal. It's a back four of Cedric, Ben White, Gabriel and Tavares. Xhaka, Lokonga and Odegaard would be my midfield. Saka would play from the right. Smith Rowe would play from the left ahead of Martinelli. And I've got my reasons for that, which I'll explain in a bit. And Lacazette leading the line. So that's my team. Ramsdale, Cedric, White, Gabriel, Tavares, Xhaka, Lokonga, Odegaard, Saka, Smith Rowe and Lacazette. But there are reasons for some of those selections. And I want to give you my sort of justification. Now, you might not agree, and that's absolutely fine. You're not obliged to agree with me in any way, shape or form. But I just want to give you some sort of some background to some of those thoughts, and to some background as to why I've come to kind of those decisions. Now, obviously, I'm not the manager, so this doesn't really matter all that much, but it's always interesting to hear other people's views on this. So please do feel free to get involved in the comment section. But this is, so there's a few points here. So I've seen some people suggest that Cedric should be switched over to left back, and that Rob Holding should come into the heart of the defense, meaning Ben White moves out to right back. Now, I've got a bit of an issue with this, because first of all, I look at Cedric every week, and although he's been much better of late, and I think the continuity and the fact that he's been playing consistently has certainly helped him in this case. But the fact that Cedric is someone that I look at every single week and have slight concerns about, I don't think it would be wise to switch him over to the wrong side, if that makes sense. Now, if you think back to last season, there were a couple of periods where we were without a left back and Cedric did that. He switched over to the left-hand side. And there were a couple of instances I remember where he got caught trying to come inside on his right foot, because that was what's natural to him and that's where he was more comfortable. And we ended up losing the ball. And there was a couple of occasions where that led to either huge chances for the opposition or goals. So I don't really want to see Cedric moved over there. I just about think we're doing okay with him at right back. To move him to the wrong side, I think would be very, very dangerous. Going into the centre of the defence, Gabriel and White, for me, have formed a really good partnership. Now, Gabriel wasn't very good the other night, let's be honest. And he's had a couple of those shaky performances throughout the course of the season. But what I would say is this. Those two, overall, throughout the duration of the season, have formed a really strong partnership. And that has been one of the real key factors in Arsenal's improvement this season. Now, you can say we haven't improved, and there are people out there who will undoubtedly say that. But at the end of the day, Arsenal have amassed more points than they did last season. We're in the race for the top four going into the sort of final stretch. You cannot deny that this Arsenal side have been better. And I think those two as a pair complement each other brilliantly. I've talked about it before. Gabriel's a little bit more physical, a little bit more sort of gung-ho in the way he goes into challenges. Ben White is a little bit more considered, a little bit more measured, looks to progress the ball, quite happy to kind of drop off the attacker sometimes and read the flight of the ball as opposed to always engaging straight away. So I think the two of them have very different qualities, characteristics, and as a result, I think they complement each other. To take one of them out of there, I think, is to create another potential issue that we don't really need to sort of create. I mean, and I know a lot of you are saying this in the chat. Jean Rene says, only way Rob Holding comes in for me is if we switch to a back three. William says, why not bring Holding back in to a 5 so that Nuno can get forward more often where he was best earlier this season. Less defensive responsibility may help him. I'll come on to address all of those points in a minute, but the reason I don't want to change other parts of the team is because they're parts of the team that have been working well. And I don't really see the benefit of causing, what's the word? Disruption in other areas of the park in order to try and deal with one area of the park. Now, if you've noticed, and I've gone with Nuno Tavares at left back, which you would have guessed based on what I've been saying throughout the week, but what I'm saying is, if you look at the way I've selected that midfield, I've selected it with the fact that Nuno Tavares and Cedric are the fullbacks in mind. And what I mean by that is, if you look at what Arsenal have done really, really well over sort of recent months and recent weeks prior to obviously the Crystal Palace game, it's been about having Thomas Partey sitting as that sort of one-man pivot in the middle of the park. Let's say this is him, and with the other two midfielders sort of squeezing on and becoming part of the press. That's with Thomas Partey, and that's with Partey's mobility allowing him to get across. You then see Gabriel and White really step up and close that gap, and you see our fullback, one of them tuck in. Tierney's been a little bit more reserved as well because of the way we've been pressing further up the pitch, or, you know, at times we've seen him bomb on. The point I'm trying to make here is that I don't think, in the absence of Thomas Partey and with two weaker, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but two weaker fullbacks on the pitch, I don't think that we can afford to play with a single man midfield anchor. So, for that reason, I want to see Xhaka partnered alongside Lokonga, with Martin Odegaard given that little bit more freedom further forward. Now, this disrupts other areas of the pitch. Okay, this is, you know, I said I don't want to do this, but I don't feel like we've got much choice at the moment. It does slightly disrupt our midfield, and it does slightly change the dynamic in our midfield, because now, you know, you're looking at Lokonga or Xhaka sort of having to stay sort of relatively close to one another and trying to deal with it, leaving any potential gaps that Cedric or Tavares might leave. Now, Tavares, I expect to get forward. That's what he does. That's what he's best at doing. So if you're really worried about his inclusion, then surely the best way to sort of proceed is to facilitate what he does best. And to have Granit Xhaka as part of a two-man midfield pivot with the ability to drop into those spaces slightly left of centre, that for me creates the environment that Nuno Tavares can thrive in. But that can't be done if Lokonga is not alongside him. If Lokonga has the legs to get up and help Martin Odegaard in the press, but get back as well and become part of that two-man midfield pivot when we're out of possession, great, happy days. But if he can't, first and foremost, he's got to make sure that he is protecting Granit Xhaka, who's going to be asked to cover the entire width of the pitch otherwise when Tavares or Cedric bomb on either side. So that's my view on the tweak that needs to be made in midfield to facilitate this. Not Granit Xhaka, not Sambi Lokonga. None of them are good enough to do what Thomas Partey's done so brilliantly, with the exception of Monday night, over the last couple of months. So you need strength in numbers. Now, this sounds a little bit OTT maybe to some, because we're at home to Brighton, a side that I expect us to beat, a side that, as I've said before, I've said in the build-up to this game, on paper, as far as fixtures go, this is the fixture you'd have wanted coming in after a defeat. This is the fixture you'd have wanted based on the fact that they're not in very good form. And of course, it's at home, it's in front of our own fans. It's one of those games that when you look at the fixtures coming up, this in Southampton, you feel like if we're going to finish in the top 4, we probably need to take 6 points from. So it sounds a bit bonkers to be thinking defense first, but it's not defense first. It's just making sure, because you can say it's defense first, but if I'm asking us to set up this way, if I want us to set up this way, it's because I want this guy, Nuno Tavares, getting up here. And then I want Xhaka coming into this type of area. Not quite a left back, not quite a centre back. And then I want Lokonga shifting over to help him out. That's what I think we're going to look at. So where we would normally have, in the way we've been playing in recent months, that extra body from midfield in Xhaka getting up there and helping out and pressing, instead Nuno Tavares is going to have that little bit more license to get up and down the pitch because of this 2-man midfield pivot. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to disrupt the team as little as possible in terms of the overall shape, but also give Nuno Tavares what he needs to succeed. And what he needs to succeed is a bit more attacking freedom, because that is the strongest part of his game. And when you move the team further forward, Odegaard didn't have a great game at Crystal Palace, but nobody did. Struggled to get on the ball. I think he was he really suffered when Crystal Palace were pressing him, harrying him. And of course, he had that moment where he gave away the penalty in the second half, and you could see the frustration in him. But I know a lot of people coming out of that game were saying, well, it's got to be Gabriel Martinelli now. It's got to be Gabriel Martinelli who comes into the side. Now, I don't think there's a lot of difference between Emile Smith-Rowe and Gabriel Martinelli. I think they're both talented. I think they're both brilliant. I think they've both got lots and lots to offer. But I think there are slight subtle differences in the way that they play that position from the left-hand side. So, for example, Gabriel Martinelli, let's pretend this is him. He will pull right out to that touchline, want to receive the ball here, and then want to carry it inside, want to drive in field and get into the box and get to the byline and go on the outside of people, go on the inside sometimes. But his starting position tends to be right out on the touchline. In Emile Smith-Rowe, you get somebody who he's got a little bit more guile about him. He's a little bit more subtle in his movement. And Emile Smith-Rowe, rather than occupying those wide spaces, the really wide spaces, likes to occupy these half spaces. Just slightly inside of the left. That's where Emile Smith-Rowe does his best sort of work, I feel. And Emile Smith-Rowe is somebody who, from that position, has got a really good tendency to get into the box and score goals. And we've seen him add that to his game this season. But the reason I'm opting for the guy that I believe operates best in the half space is because I keep talking about it. If I want Nuno Tavares to get forward and be at his best, he needs to be coming in on the outside. He needs to have the license to get up and down that flank. Now, there will be times where Smith-Rowe might drift out here, in which case, if we've got that protection in midfield, if we've got the right shape and the right setup, Tavares, who, again, we've seen can do this, can drift into that half space as well, become part of the midfield, become part of the attack. That is how you're going to get the best out of this guy at a time when his confidence is shot. Now, if he can come in to the team on Saturday, come back into the team on Saturday, perform, get forward, get involved in the play, make a positive contribution, all of a sudden his confidence flips. Confidence is something that is easily lost but easily regained. You have a good performance, it can all come flooding back. He hasn't lost his ability. He hasn't lost his running power. He hasn't lost his unpredictability. He hasn't lost, his sort of desire to get forward. all that's happened is he's lost his confidence, and getting him in the areas in which he can do his best, I think is going to be key to kind of rebuilding the guy. And we need to rebuild him because Kieran Tierney's not going to be available and we don't have another left back option. He proved to us earlier in the season that he can do it. He proved to us earlier in the season that he can be an asset to the group. And now it's time for us to stick by him as Arsenal fans, the club, the manager. They need to stick by him. They need to do what I think would work best for him. They need to give him the platform to succeed and the platform upon which he can rebuild that confidence, because he needs it. We need it. And that's how Arsenal are going to be in the best possible shape moving forward between now and the end of the season. So that's the way I'd line up. And my reason, as I say, for picking Emile Smith-Rowe over Martinelli is not because I don't like Martinelli. I saw someone put a comment on one of the videos I did a little while ago, a few days ago, actually, like maybe a couple of weeks ago, saying, oh, Harry doesn't rate Martinelli. That's absolute nonsense. It's not the case. I just think that tactically, with Nuno Tavares at left back and without the added security that Kieran Tierney's given us in recent weeks, I think this is the right way to go. So that's my opinion. That's my view. So my team, just to reiterate, for the game against Brighton is Ramsdale in goal, Cedric, White, Gabriel and Tavares, Xhaka, Lokonga and Odegaard, Smith-Rowe, Saka and Lacazette. That is my team. Let me take some of you guys' thoughts as well. Steve Stone says, to play a back three, someone further up will have to be dropped. We are weak up top as it is. At home against Brighton, we should go as a 4, in my opinion. A back three works well in tough away fixtures. Yeah, and Steve, you're absolutely spot on. Had this been an away game at Chelsea, my mind and my outlook might have been different. But you make a really valid point about playing with a back three, because this ability to press people, close the game into certain, or force the game into certain areas of the park and pin teams back, which has been one of our real strengths when we've played well. That's been happening because we've got a 3-man midfield to do it with. We've had Xhaka and Odegaard to push that little bit further forward, and then Thomas Partey's been able to kind of fill that void in between, but also get forward as well when necessary. If you take out one of our midfielders to add another centre-back, are we going to be able to control the game as much as we'd like? Are we going to be able to pin Brighton back into their own half and hopefully overwhelm them? No. To lose a midfielder, I think, is more significant than to play with one less centre-back in a game like this where we're expecting to be on the front foot. So, yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it goes back to what I was saying before. If you play with a back three, okay, you might feel a little bit more comfortable with Nuno Tavares being in the side, but you also take away from your midfield. So again, you're creating another potential issue. You're asking us to do something in the middle of the park that we haven't done for months, in order to then sort of facilitate something else. You don't solve a problem by creating another one. I really do believe that. Jean-René says, I agree with Harry. This is also how I would start the game, with a double midfield pivot. He does say, however, I would start Martinelli. Look, I guess you're saying Martinelli for Emile Smith-Rowe. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of people are suggesting that Martinelli should start up front instead of Lacazette. Again, it's very similar to what I was saying about Nuno Tavares. What benefit do we get from exiling Alexander Lacazette at the moment? It's not like we've got another striker on the substitutes bench who is good enough, or who is chomping at the bit, or who's really committed and who's desperate to come in and make a difference, or that anybody feels could genuinely come in and do that. We've got an Eddie Nketiah who, with all due respect, I don't think is at this level, and I don't mean that horribly, but he's not. And you've got, and you've got in Eddie Nketiah a player that is not committed because he's not signing a new contract, and there are reasons for that, and his reasons are his reasons, and that's okay. It's not a problem for me. But for example, if we had like an Olivier Giroud on the bench, let's just say for argument's sake, I wouldn't be against taking Lacazette out. If we had an Aubameyang on the bench, which we don't, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole again, we would take him out, no problem. If we had, anybody of a sort of slightly lower, anybody that you think could come in and do a good job, me sticking with Lacazette it's not because I think that Lacazette is doing brilliantly at the moment. I think he does give us a lot. I think he does link play up very well. And I think he's key to Smith Rowe, Saka, Odegaard, all playing as close to their best as possible. But it's more an indictment of where we're at. The thing is, overall, since Aubameyang's gone, we've been better. The results have been better. We've scored more goals. And so you can't really deny that. And also, the culture was rotten at this football club. We've had to weed out a lot of players. Aubameyang was one of them. And I'm not allowed to sort of discuss this sort of prior, but I've heard some stuff over the last week that just to me is it further kind of highlighted that Aubameyang was a problem for Arsenal, and that Aubameyang, who obviously would naturally deny wrongdoing, just doesn't seem to get it. So yeah, I'm in this weird position where, I'm in this position where I don't think I know that Aubameyang was a problem. I know that Aubameyang, was somebody that needed to be moved on, and once I kind of made my mind up on that, and we all know what the incident was, and we all know that Aubameyang had offended, if you like, on numerous occasions. Knowing that alone was enough for me to switch off from Aubameyang, because you're the club captain. You can't keep doing that. So I'm not one of these people that every time we don't score a goal goes, "Oh, where's Aubameyang? I can't believe it. We should never have let him go." No, he had to go. And him going and Lacazette not scoring, they're two separate issues for me. They don't amalgamate into one, because let's be honest, Aubameyang wasn't scoring for Arsenal, prior to his departure. That's the honest truth. He wasn't. It's really easy in hindsight to look back and say, "Oh my God, we should have kept Aubameyang." But what had he actually contributed for Arsenal in the Premier League this season? He contributed 4 goals, which wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire. Do you know what I mean? Okay, let's go back to the chat. See what you guys are saying as well. Big hello to Danny Guzman, who joins us from Chicago. Hope you're well, mate. Hope you're well. What time is it in Chicago? Is it earlier? Yeah, it's earlier, isn't it, than it is here? Yeah. So enjoy your Friday. Danny, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it. Said Abdullah says that Smith Rowe, I prefer him because he's a team player, not selfish like Martinelli. I wouldn't go as far as saying that Martinelli's selfish as a footballer. He's someone that likes to pick the ball up and run and do it himself. And when I used to play football, I was like that as well. So I don't really think that that's necessarily a bad thing. But I get what you're trying to say, which is that Emile Smith Rowe probably give us that little bit more defensively. Martin AFC says Harry is biased towards lack of threat because they both have shaped beards. Really? Really? We going into that? No, not at all, mate. There's no alternative. What's the alternative? If somebody can give me an alternative that they can guarantee is going to come in and do better, or they're even 50% confident will come in and do better. Don't tell me Nicolas Pepe, who's never played a game at centre forward for Arsenal in his entire life. Don't tell me Gabriel Martinelli, who's repeatedly told everybody he doesn't want to play there. Give me solutions. And if there are solutions, then I'm happy to hear them. Michael Grayson says you can't go wrong with Emile Smith Rowe or Martinelli in that position. Which one has a better chemistry with Tavares, and which one tactically is better against Brighton? Michael says probably Martinelli. I think it's the other way around. I think that Martinelli... I think that for Tavares to thrive, and that's factored into my thinking as well, I think you need someone who's going to operate in the half spaces more than pin himself out to the flank. Otherwise, you're asking Tavares to come in field, and I know he can do that, and he has done that from time to time. And that's one of the things I like about him when he gets forward, that you don't really know what way he's going to go, but I still think he can do his best on the outside, in which case I want the player in front of him who gives us a little bit more defensive stability, just because his defending Tavares is a little bit suspect, but also is more likely to operate slightly inward. The Yasir says that Harry, are you sure you want to drop Martinelli? You say you saw how we played offensively without him in the last game. We struggled, yeah, but again, I've explained my tactical reasons for that. What else have we got in the chat? Steve Stone says the whole team was shocking against Palace. I see no sense in highlighting individuals. Yeah, look, I think we can be critical of individual performances. Where I don't see any sense is in dwelling on those individual performances when everybody else was bad. Now, I say that just before I'm about to say that for me, one of the big factors here is that Gabriel has to have a better game as well. We keep talking about the midfield providing that bit of cover for Tavares, or what winger should play ahead of him so that he can thrive. But as well, he was not helped by Gabriel having an absolute mare on Monday night. So we need both of them to be at a good level, because one impacts the other. They play alongside each other, and I do think that there was an element of that to why Tavares didn't really perform on Monday night as well. Okay, we're going to take a short pause, and then we're going to take some of your questions between now and the end of the show. So fill up the chat box. Welcome back to the Chronicles of Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min Football Network. Q&A section. Let's hear what you guys have to say, what you guys want to talk about in the final few minutes of the show. Inter says, why not Pepe? The manager had no experience but was given a chance, so why not try Pepe as a striker? Well, convince me that he should play. Because the reason I don't want Pepe as a striker, I'll explain to you why I don't want him to play as a striker, and then you can feel free in the chat. You can throw it back at me as to why you think I'm wrong, or what your view is on this in particular. So one of the reasons that I believe Arsenal have been better with Lacazette at centre forward than we were when Aubameyang was playing was because tactically we'd evolved, we'd changed, and the emphasis has shifted from the centre forward, a bit like Man City, and I know that Mikel Arteta will have a lot of similar ideas to Pep Guardiola. I know we don't have the players to necessarily implement all of those, and he has to, he has to be mindful of that. He has to be aware of that when sort of trying things. But what the emphasis is not on the centre forward to score. I know this sounds stupid because the centre forward should score, and they should score in spite of this. But the emphasis in this team, I believe, is on Saka and whoever plays on the left, whether it's Martinelli or whether that's Emile Smith-Rowe. And I think that's a large reason as to why the two top scorers, Smith-Rowe, who's played more often than not this season from the left, and Saka, who's played from the right. The whole system is geared and designed to give them more opportunities. Lacazette's job, or the centre-forward's job, is first and foremost is to occupy, is to create space for others, is to vacate certain areas and take defenders with them, to get the attention of defensive midfielders to allow us to swarm and overwhelm people. And then a top striker would drift into the penalty area and score goals as well. Lacazette is not that, okay? But he does half the job, if you like. So in whoever plays at centre forward for Arsenal now has a huge impact on how well Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe or Gabby Martinelli, whichever one plays from the left, they have a big impact on the level of their performance. Also, they have a big impact on Martin Odegaard's performance, who will drift into half spaces and pings balls into the centre forward as well as other people in order to create those spaces and to create those overloads from which we seem to score goals. So whoever plays at centre forward for Arsenal has a huge responsibility over the performance of those other guys. And Mikel Arteta knows that. Mikel Arteta recognizes that. And that's why every time somebody comes at him with a comment about Lacazette and a lack of goals, he highlights the rest of what he brings to the table. He highlights his wider contribution. Because although Mikel would love him to score more goals, and I'd love him to score more goals, and you'd love him to score more goals, first and foremost, he needs to facilitate the functioning of the rest of the team. And that's why I don't want Pepe there. Has Pepe ever shown he can hold the ball up? Has Pepe ever shown that he can link up with people in the way that Lacazette can? No, I don't think he had. I don't think he can. I don't think he can. Nicolas Pepe is a much better finisher than Alex Lacazette, though. But if we don't have that whole sort of system working correctly, then those chances don't come for the centre forward. In which case, Nicolas Pepe could quite easily be isolated. I think that's why Nicolas Pepe shouldn't play up top. Let's see what else we've got. I'll take some more of your questions. JW says, we've all agreed at some point that because we have the youngest team, we're going to hit road bumps, 100%. Does my head in that when we have a poor game, some people think it's the end of the world. Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And I've said this repeatedly throughout the week. For me, the biggest worry and concern comes from the injuries that we've picked up over the international break and on Monday night, more than the result in itself in isolation. You can easily go and get beaten away from home in the Premier League. It's the nature of the division. So, yeah, I think you're right. Alejandro says, I feel like we can get away with trying something out against Brighton. Maybe, but I would be wary of taking too many risks, because that can sometimes cause dysfunction due to things not being familiar. Maybe. Steve Stone says, are you going tomorrow, Harry? Yep, I should be there, mate. I should be there. Do come over and say hello. Do drop me a message. Amira says, hi, Harry. Do you find it strange when people defend a player for working hard? Isn't that the bare minimum from any employee in any job? You should at least be able to do what you're employed to do. Yeah, I think there's a minimum level that you expect and that the player has to put in. But there are some that do it better than others, I think, or some that work harder than others. It doesn't mean that the others are all working sort of below the minimum standard, but there are players that do go above and beyond, and I think that's why they get that little bit of more praise about it. Dean says, you're not happy with Lacazette, but you don't want to give Pepe a chance up front. A striker's main job is to score goals. Your argument makes no sense. You're contradicting yourself now. My argument in a nutshell, I've just been through it, so I'm not going to go through it again. But my argument in a nutshell is that Lacazette's ability to hold the ball up and ability to drop into deeper spaces is key in Arsenal as a machine functioning right. It's key in the functioning of Saka, Martinelli, or Smith Rowe on the other side, and Odegaard. It's all intertwined. It's all interlinked. And Mikel Arteta recognises that. And that's why, despite Lacazette not scoring goals, he still feels that he's the right option for that. Nicolas Pepe is a great finisher. Great finisher. No doubt about that. The best finisher at the club, in my opinion. But if the team is not functioning, those chances that you think that Nicolas Pepe is going to put away are not going to come, because he'll be isolated. Brighton are not going to come to the Emirates Stadium and push their back line up to the halfway line for Nicolas Pepe to run in behind. He's not going to get the space in the middle of the park that he does on the right wing when he pulls out really wide and receives it almost on the touchline, and then has time to get it under his spell and then carry it in field. He's going to have the ball pinged into his body with centre-backs around him, closing him in, and he's not going to have any time or any space. And Lacazette does that better than Pepe. That's all I'm saying. It's not that it's not that, and you keep saying I'm not happy with Lacazette. I'm half happy with Lacazette. I'm half happy with him because he does half the job. I don't think Pepe could do half the job. I don't think without that link, without that connection, without that familiarity, that Nicolas Pepe would get the chances that we all believe he could convert. In which case, what is he bringing to the table in that position? Chris says, so there's no accountability for Lacazette even after poor performances. Of course there's accountability, Chris. Every day I do a press review show and I'm talking about strikers that we want. And I'm talking about the need for a striker. And I'm talking about the fact that that's a position we desperately need to upgrade on. There is accountability. And I recognize that Lacazette is not the finished article and that he's not the man that's going to take us forward. But it goes back to the point I made earlier on today. What is the alternative? We can't click our fingers and bring a striker in the middle of April. We can't do it. We looked in January. We didn't get a deal done. Have your complaints about that. Have your moans about that. Have your concerns about that. and look back at the end of the season, maybe with hindsight, and say it was a mistake. But at this point, there's no point in crying over spilt milk because we can't change that now. Michael Grayson makes a great point. Firmino doesn't score a lot for Liverpool, but makes them deadly. How many times through Roberto Firmino's Liverpool career did we hear criticism of his lack of goals? But just like what Mikel Arteta is trying to build, Firmino's primary role at Liverpool for many, many years has been to facilitate the thriving of Mo Salah and Sadio Mane. They've got Jota now, who scores more goals and sometimes plays in that position. But Firmino still gets more out of Salah and Mane. He does. The stats back that up. The stats prove that. What else have we got? Let's see what you guys are saying. I'm getting lots of criticism. I'm getting lots and lots of criticism from you guys around Lacazette. And I'll say it 1,000,001 times. I'm not massively sort of in favor of Lacazette. I just don't think that there's any alternative at the moment. And so why we've got 8-9 games left at the end of the season. You know that Lacazette at the very least can get more or gets a lot out of Saka, Smith Rowe, whatever. Why would you start pissing about now and potentially impacting on Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Odegaard just to give Nicolas Pepe a try up front? It feels like an even greater risk. And it goes back to my initial sort of prognosis and my initial view, which is in the absence of key players, having found a system that doesn't work every week, no system does, but having found a system that works for the most part and having found the system that has put us in a position where we are challenging for the top four, as little disruption as possible is the way to go. So that's my view. 33-5er says, Harry, we just need to support the team moving forward. This is needed to get us over the line. Agreed, man. Agreed. Look, we all know who the players are in that team that we don't want to see there next season. We all know who the players are in that team that we need to upgrade on. How many times we're going to go through it? But battering and killing the confidence of some of our players going into some of the most important games of the season doesn't do anybody any good. You can be critical, but you can be respectful. You know, you can have an opinion that Pepe should start up front or Martinelli should start up front. That's fine. But to sort of, you know, like I think that Smith Rowe should start. It might be Martinelli though. But if it is Martinelli, you're not going to catch me shouting at the Emirates Stadium that Arteta's an idiot and get him out. We can have opinions, but there will be different opinions because that's the nature of people. And we should try to see them. And I see what a lot of people are saying. Like, if we were to slot a ball through and put a striker through on goal, I'd rather it was Nicolas Pepe one-on-one with a goalkeeper than Alexander Lacazette all day long. But I don't think we create those situations or goal-scoring situations in general as frequently without Lacazette in the team. If you think about, and Mike Stavrou made this really good point, I've brought it up a couple of times since on the show, the two opportunities that we did create at Crystal Palace, from which we should have scored from both and really pulled ourselves back into the game, Lacazette and his hold-up play and his unselfish nature facilitated those. Now, Odegaard couldn't convert, Smith Rowe couldn't convert, but the point is that had Laka not been there, those chances don't come. You don't know that we'd have had more if someone else was playing up front. So what you're doing now is, with 9 games to go, you're suggesting that we should be veering into the unknown and hoping that it works. So that's my view on that anyway. Okay, we are going to leave it there. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let's try and get up to 100 likes by the time the outro plays. We're still quite a way away, but there's enough of you watching, so I've got faith. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you're subscribed to the Chronicles of a Gooner channel if you're new. And we'll be back tomorrow, of course, with some content around the game. Arsenal take on Brighton at the Emirates Stadium. Big game, good discussion, good debate with you guys in the chat as well. Always enjoyable. I'll be back very, very soon with more. Until next time, take care. Goodbye.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.